everyone, this is John Daly again. I'm here with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going today, Bernie?
All good so far.
Good, good. So today we'll be talking a bit about the Biden presidency and how different blocks of voters view it, not only now, but what they want to see happen come 2024. Now, Biden's approval rating has not been good, as everybody knows. Lately, he's been around 40% or slightly less than that, and I think it's safe to say there's lots of reasons, but a big reason has to do with this high inflation that we were told was going to be very temporary, but we've been experiencing it for several months now. But looking forward, Bernie, you wrote a recent New York Times, you wrote about a recent New York Times poll in your Monday column. It showed that only 13% of the country believes that we're headed in the right direction now. But perhaps more interestingly, was some of the party breakdown stuff, including how Democratic voters feel about the idea of Biden running for a second term. You want to go ahead and talk about that a bit?
Yeah. According to the poll, 64% of Democrats don't want Biden to run for re-election. As you said, John, 13% think we're on the right track. And on this particular poll, his approval rating isn't 40%, it's 33%. Now, that constitutes Biden, politically speaking, as a dead man walking. I mean, he's the most unpopular president of the modern era. Yet that same poll says that in a rematch, a hypothetical rematch with Trump in 2024, Biden gets 44%, Trump gets 41%. Now, I know the people listening to us who are diehard Trump supporters will say it's a fake poll, polls don't matter. Granted, it's a snapshot in time, but I don't think any of us should ignore the poll because it also shows that 49% of Republican voters don't want Trump to run for re-election. And among younger voters, it's overwhelming that they don't want Trump to run for re-election. And 16% said if he does run for re-election, they'll abandon him. They'll either sit home on election day, they'll vote for the Democrat on election day, or they haven't made up their mind yet. You can't win if 16% of your own party doesn't support you. That means if everybody else in the party, everybody else supports you, that's only 84% of your own party who support you. You can't win with only 84% of your own party.
Right. Now, oh, go ahead.
Well, just one more sentence, John. What it comes down to is that Republicans don't want Trump to run by and large. Democrats don't want Biden to run by and large. And yet that may come to pass.
Right. Now, that does beg a question. If Biden does sort of give to the pressure and comes to realize just that he's become this political liability to Democrats, you have to wonder who's there waiting to run, instead of him. Would it be the kind of person who would be attractive to Democratic voters? Would that be a progressive activist type, or after Biden, will they see, he tried some woke stuff and it didn't go over very well? And are they going to be more interested in competence and governing experience? There are some examples that we've seen of some Democratic leaders recently showing that they kind of understand how badly a lot of this woke agenda has been hurting them. Whether it be the defund the police or some other things, it doesn't play well with most Americans.
First, let me say that while I'm out of the prediction business, my crystal ball broke in 2016 when I confidently predicted that Donald Trump wouldn't even run for president. So I'm out of the prediction business, except for this. Joe Biden is not running for re-election. And if somehow he decides to run for re-election, I'm not at all sure he's going to get the nomination. So that leads to your very important question. If Biden's not on the ticket, who is? Is it a moderate Democrat or a progressive Democrat? The progressives aren't going to settle for a moderate, and the moderate have enough brains at this point to realize that the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, AOC wing of the party hasn't done them any good. So who's out there. They have a very thin bench. I mean, you have Pete Buttigieg, you have Amy Klobuchar. I'm not saying these are bad people, but they don't instill any passion. They just don't. On the other hand, the Republican Party, I know you didn't ask me this, but the Republican Party has a whole bunch of people that engender interest and passion. So it's going to be a battle on the Democratic side between the two factions you mentioned, John, the progressive side and the old school moderate Democratic side. And that's not going to help them, by the way, because when two factions fight and are each other's throat during a primary campaign, that hurts the party in the general election. So if you're a Republican and you want a Republican to win, hope Biden doesn't run. Hope Kamala Harris does run, by the way, because she couldn't get elected dog catcher in the United States of America, and hope that there's a battle between the two sides leading up to a general election, because a battle between the two sides will not be good for the Democratic Party.
Well, no, that's interesting because we were talking about how badly Biden's been polling. Harris polls even worse than Biden does, and she's not really even in charge of anything. She's supposed to be, but yeah.
Let me just jump in for a second on that. I think, and this goes beyond politics, people who are listening to us now, I think you'll associate with this. Once somebody has an impression of you, it's very difficult to shake that impression. And Kamala Harris has the impression that she's a zero. Biden has the impression that he's either lost his ability to think clearly or something along those lines. I don't think anything's going to change those impressions at this point.
No, I agree. Now, as you'd mentioned, half of the Republicans don't want Donald Trump to run again, but that means roughly half, they still do. And also in that poll, I believe it was that poll, unless I'm confusing it with another one, but it also showed that half of Republicans want Trump to be the nominee in 2024. I think Ron DeSantis was a distant second at 25%. So there's still a lot of interest, at least from Republicans, in Trump running.
Right, but here you've touched on a very interesting point. Half the Republicans don't want Trump to run. 64% of the Democrats don't want Biden to run. But if they do, 92% of Democrats will support Biden, and most Republicans, way most, will support Trump. So they'd rather they not run, but if they do, they'll get the support of their base. Again, in Trump's case, if something like 16% will abandon him, that's trouble. In Biden's case, if 92% will vote for him, Democrats vote for him, if he's the nominee, that will help Biden. And that's why the poll indicates that in a theoretical rematch, a hypothetical rematch, Biden will beat Trump, because more Democrats will support Biden than Republicans supporting Trump.
Now, there are a lot of Republican pundits, I've been reading the work of, who insist that Ron DeSantis is probably the best shot the Republicans have of defeating Trump. And at this time, that's probably true. At the same time, though, I think about all these past Republican primaries. There was a time when Rudy Giuliani entered the race, many years ago, and everybody thought, oh, this guy's going to win it. He was the immediate front runner. We thought that about Rick Perry at one point. And it just hasn't seemed to pan out. Do you think he may be peaking a little bit early, Ron DeSantis?
It's a tough question, but I don't. I think if Trump does not run, and if Trump does not sandbag Ron DeSantis for God knows what, I mean, anything is possible with Donald Trump if his ego feels threatened. And if he feels threatened by Ron DeSantis' popularity, you never know what he's going to do. But assuming Donald Trump stays out of this, and if I had to pick today, which is ridiculous because it's more than 2 years out, I'd say DeSantis will hold on to his power. You have Nikki Haley, you have Mike Pence, you have Mike Pompeo. There'll be 3 or 4 or 5 others, but DeSantis has caught the attention of Republican voters at this point. And I think, again, it's a long way between now and November 2024. But I'm guessing he didn't peak too soon.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You'd mentioned, that, if Trump stays out of this, I tend to believe he won't. I mean, he's already hinting at September at having a big announcement about what he wants to do. Maybe he'll surprise me, and maybe he won't. Throw his name into the hat. But if he does, I gotta believe he's gonna come at DeSantis pretty hard, and he could do a lot of damage to a lot of people. We saw that. We've seen that over the last several years, and it makes me wonder if he really is going to be able to. DeSantis is fairly popular right now. Not as popular as Trump, but it'll be interesting to see if those attacks would have an effect and basically sort of level the playing field for perhaps somebody else, and if there's going to be someone who's going to overcome Trump, if that's even possible.
Well, we've left something very important out of this conversation, and that is if Trump decides to run, according to the people close to him, as the news reports put it, he's wondering if he should announce before the midterms or after the midterms.
That's right.
This is insane. Right now, the attention is on Joe Biden, and that's not good for the Democrats in the 2022 midterms. If Donald Trump announces, if he announces at all, and if he announces before the midterms, this is very, let me emphasize the word very bad news for the Republicans. I'm not saying they're not going to win the House, but it's going to hurt them because the Democrats who might have sat home on election day because inflation is bad, crime is bad, southern border is bad, why should I get up and go out and vote, they're saying. And they might have sat home, and that would lead to the predicted red wave. If Trump gets in the race, it won't affect solidly Democratic districts and it won't affect solidly Republican districts, but it will affect moderate districts. It will affect swing districts. The worst thing that can happen to the Republican Party is Donald Trump announcing, I think at all, but certainly the worst thing that could happen is if he announces before the primaries. And he's capable of doing that because Donald Trump cares about only one thing, and it's not the Republican Party, it's Donald Trump. And if he feels threatened by DeSantis's popularity, as we're hearing hints about, he may announce before, and that would be tragic. Again, I'm not saying they'd lose the House. They probably won't win the Senate if that happens, but it would be a terrible move, and it would prove what I've long tried to tell my friends out there who are avid Trump supporters, not the ones who simply voted for Trump because they thought he was better than Biden or Hillary, but avid Trump supporters. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about the party. He doesn't care about the country or the Constitution. He cares only about himself. And I hope for the sake of Republican candidates that he does not announce before the primary. Let me say one other thing. In late 2011 or early 2012, I got a phone call from Donald Trump, and he said he was asking for advice on whether he was going to run or not. I said, I'm a journalist. I don't give advice to people who are thinking of running. But he indicated he was going to run, and he didn't run that time. So just because he's indicating he's going to run doesn't mean he's going to run. It means he likes to hear himself talk and get in the newspapers and on TV. I don't know if he's going to run. I know what I hope. I hope he doesn't, but I don't know.
Right. Yeah, you bring up a good point about the House and the Senate. I think the House is pretty much a lock, but but like if he gets in early, that might, or makes the announcement early. Yeah, that could definitely hurt the number of seats. I think it put the Senate in jeopardy, which would, it shouldn't have been in Democratic hands now anyway, if not for Trump too. But yeah, it's very frustrating for those who want to see more Republicans in Congress. Right now it's all Democratic rule.
And this leads I sound like a broken record on this. I understand Donald Trump. I've met him, I've talked to him, I've interviewed him. He's called me, as I said. I have much more, I even understand people who voted for him because they didn't like Hillary, as I said, or didn't like Biden. I understand that. But the diehard supporters, they fascinate me. They just absolutely fascinate me. He's lied to you, talking to the diehard supporters. He's misled you. He's played you for suckers. He doesn't care about you. He only cares about himself, but he needs you. He needs you, so he uses you. And the ones who baffle me even more than the ordinary American diehard supporters are the Rudy Giuliani's and the John Eastman, his lawyer, and that idiot Sidney Powell who thinks the voting machines were rigged in Venezuela or whatever the hell she thinks. These people totally are off the charts on the crazy meter. Do they just like being close to power? I don't get, my head hurts when I try to figure this out.
There was a time when all three of those people you just mentioned had very, very strong reputations, not just within the party, but elsewhere. And yeah, that's just an interesting side note to kind of see just how, I don't know if they saw that a lot of the stuff sort of worked for Trump, just kind of doing whatever and not seeing a whole lot of many ramifications come from it. If there's sort of I don't know. There's a lot. I can't explain a lot of it.
Take Rudy Giuliani along the lines of what you just said. He had a great reputation.
Oh yeah.
He was a United States attorney in the Southern District of New York. He put away mafia figures. Takes a lot of guts. Takes a lot of courage. Takes a lot of smarts. Then he became mayor of New York City. He was a Republican who was elected mayor of New York City, where you can't find any Republicans. They still liked him and voted for him. 9/11 came. He was now transcended from New York City's mayor to America's mayor. And he lost it all. He voluntarily flushed it down the toilet in support of Donald Trump. You do certain times, we all do crazy things in our lives. But to do it for Donald Trump, to throw your reputation away for Donald Trump will run over Giuliani with a bus if it suits his purposes. He will do it.
Absolutely. He's done it with a number of other people for sure. So that'd be very on brand for him. So the last area I want to touch on, we were talking about the different segments of voters, Democratic voters, Republican voters. I wanted to talk a little bit too about independent voters who in the end ultimately decide elections. Now, from the polls we've seen, that I've seen at least over the last several weeks, independents are pretty clear that they don't want either Biden or Trump to run again. It's a lot of times these folks kind of seem like they're on the sidelines, and to an extent they are until the election itself. But I'm wondering, between now and in 2024, would you expect to see more independents who are fed up with this become involved in party politics to better shape who the parties nominate, in the primaries? And do you think the parties themselves will take more of a hands-on role in elevating candidates who are more attractive to independent voters?
On the first part of your question, will the independents sort of galvanize and try to use their power to have a say in who the nominee is? I don't think so. I think the independents will be stuck. Let me rephrase that. I think they will be left to decide between who the parties nominate. Whoever, if it's Biden, they'll make their decision based on that, and they don't like Biden. If it's Trump, they'll based on that, they don't like Trump. If it's both, then they have their hands full because they're going to have to pick between two people they don't like. And so I don't think they're going to become a force in that sense. The second part of your question, will the parties try to appeal to them? I think the parties in the primaries, the candidates appeal to the people who vote in the primaries, and then they move to the center. Again, I think the independent voters are going to be left with whoever the parties decide on. I don't think the Democrats are going to say, well, who do the independents want? They constitute, let's say, 20% of the electorate. Who do they want? I think they're going to wonder who Bernie Sanders wants, who Elizabeth Warren wants, and who the moderate wing wants. And on the Republican side, I don't think they're going to say who do the independents want. They're going to be conscious of the fact that independents may not want somebody, but I don't think they're going to pick somebody specifically to appeal to the 20%. They're going to pick somebody to appeal to the 80%.
Yeah, I think the reason I bring this up is I have seen, and it's not been a huge, there hasn't been a lot of momentum behind it, but I am seeing more primaries go to ranked choice voting to try and get these more acceptable candidates to the general electorate. Glenn Youngkin won the Republican primary through ranked choice voting. I'm not sure he would have won that otherwise. They did that in the New York mayoral race. You know, a lot of people have problems with their current mayor too, but he was seen at the time as more of a moderate choice on the Democratic side. So, you know, I don't know if there's going to be much more momentum we're going to see down the line with that. Do you have any views on ranked choice voting at all?
Yeah, we should explain it first. It's
Yeah.
where voters vote for who they want, but they also pick second, third, and I think up to fourth or fifth. I don't like it. I understand it. If enough, let's say a vast majority of voters pick a certain candidate to come in second, and the first place vote is split among 5 candidates, well, maybe most voters really want the second place candidate. I hope you're following this out there. I know you're following it, John, but I hope it makes sense. I'm just old school in a lot of things, and in this, I think if there are 5 candidates, whoever gets the most votes wins. I mean, I know that's sort of simplistic, but so am I. And I think that's how it should be.
See,
I'm not a fan.
I'm becoming sold on, and it really, to me, I think it's more important when you have a lot of candidates running, because, you know, for example, we go back to 2016 and we saw that, you know, Trump, you know, throughout the primary, he was somewhere between 20% and a third. He had that much Republican support and won with the plurality in the end. And I think a large part of that was how many other people were in that. So, you know, one of the points I always make is that 2/3 of Republican voters in 2016 wanted someone who wasn't Trump. And when you have that many candidates, I can see the benefit in this idea where, you know, people could say this is my first pick, but I'd be acceptable with this person, you know, I have no problem with this person, to be able to use that ranked choice. And I get it. It's tough. It is sort of complicated. It's tough to explain to people. And in smaller groups, you know, when there's not that many candidates running, I don't think it could play as important of a role. But yeah, that's definitely something I've become, I think can do some good.
I'm open to changing my mind over time because I understand what you just said. And I understand that, let's use real names. Let's say Donald Trump gets 20% of the vote and Marco Rubio gets 50% or 80% of the second place votes. You want my political analysis in 2 words? Tough noogies. I mean, tough noogies. Donald Trump got more votes, so he wins.
Right.
But for you, John, I'll keep an open mind.
Excellent. That's all I can ask for. Well, that's probably a good place to leave it at. I want to thank everybody for joining this again. Like I always say, leave your comments in the comment section. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if there's topics you want us to talk about. Bernie, you have anything else you want to say to people this week?
Just to my friends who are diehard Trump supporters who think I'm crazy, nothing personal. I don't dislike you personally. Feel free to come at me, but I don't think you get it. I don't think you understand that Donald Trump cares only about Donald Trump, but I still like all of you.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks everybody. Bernie, you have a great day.
You too, John. Bye-bye.
Thanks.